Story 1. Whether you believe he is the Son of God or not, I do not know how it could be anyone other than the person we know today as Jesus. 3 billion Christians pray to him and follow his message. 2 billion Muslims consider him a prophet, and even the years of the calendar we use today are based on the year of his birth. If that is not an influential life, then I do not know what is. Story 2. Jesus of Nazareth. Culturally, historically, politically, morally, and philosophically, the whole Western Hemisphere has been built and inspired by him. Also, who else has the entire calendar divided into before and after their birth? Story 3. I know this is going to get lost in the comments, but it is Fritz Haber, the scientist who figured out how to make chemical fertilizer. Without him, it would not have been possible to feed half the world's population. Story 4. Being influential is not always a good thing, so I am going to mention Adolf Hitler. Story 5. Alexander Fleming, the inventor of penicillin. Without him, modern medicine would not exist. Antibiotics have prolonged the lives of billions. Also considered are Sun Tzu, Laozi, Confucius, Muhammad, and Buddha. Story 6. Probably Jesus or Muhammad. I would say some of the older Abrahamic patriarchs, but I am not sure about their historicity. Story 7. Apostle Paul made Jesus influential in Europe. Without him, Christianity may never have spread across the world through European colonialism. Story 8. Even if Reddit users do not want to admit it, probably Jesus in the West and Buddha in the East. Story 9. My high school history teacher had a book of the 100 most influential people of all time. The top 3 were 1. Muhammad. 2. Isaac Newton. 3. Jesus Christ. I forget who was on the list after that. The reasoning for Muhammad was not just that he started a major religion, but that in life he was an actual military leader and conqueror. Story 10. Jesus Christ and the aura of the New Testament. Excuse my ignorance of other religions, including Muhammad. Story 11. The person who wrote shave and a haircut cannot hear bum, bum bum, bum, bum without finishing with bum bum. Story 12. Of people whose names we know, Muhammad is the most influential. He surpasses Jesus because it was Paul who turned Christianity into a major world religion. Muhammad established Islam himself before he died. Also, Jesus was not fictional. There is no strong historical argument to support that claim. The vast majority of trained historians do not take it seriously. Most of the people who believe otherwise are motivated by opposition to the contemporary American religious right, which is not a valid reason to reinterpret historical sources. Story 13. Unfortunately, Adolf Hitler influenced many people, and those individuals committed evil acts. Story 14. A very famous book, The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, labels the most influential person as Muhammad. Story 15. I think Thomas Midgley Jr. has a good case for the most influential person nobody has heard about before, and not in a good way. He discovered that putting lead in gasoline makes engines run better, and that chlorofluorocarbons are perfectly reasonable to use in many different applications, causing the biggest human-made climate emergency other than global warming. Together, these discoveries are arguably the most damaging from a single person in human history. Story 16. I looked it up a long time ago, and the answer was Muhammad. Story 17. Many responses here seem to confuse influential with consequential. Story 18. Whoever invented the wheel has to be very important. Story 19. Thomas Midgley Jr. invented and advocated for both leaded gasoline and Freon. He single-handedly did more damage to the environment and atmosphere than any other organism. He nearly wiped out most living things on Earth and remains mostly unknown. The only reason we are still alive is because brave people dedicated their lives to proving that his inventions were killing the planet. We managed to ban these substances in time to prevent irreversible effects. Leaded gasoline has caused millions of deaths worldwide and lasting neurological damage to large portions of the population. It is attributed to increased aggressiveness, and one theory is that it contributed to the rise in serial killers in the 1970s, although this isn't proven. The exact number of deaths caused by leaded gasoline is difficult to estimate, but likely numbers in the hundreds of millions. Many more have lived with lifelong health issues because of it. Story 20. Probably the creator of vaccines or penicillin, or any person who has made major contributions to agriculture. Story 21. In terms of ideas, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution completely changed our view of ourselves, what we are, and where we are going. It was not Jesus. The teachings of Jesus were similar to those of other prophets and mystics throughout history. There is a theory that Jesus was a Buddhist monk who emigrated to the Middle East. In terms of invention, it was whoever invented printing, possibly Gutenberg. Printing not only made commerce, administration, and education easier, but it also increased our empathy for people different from us because literature allowed us to understand their lives. Many credit Uncle Tom's Cabin with motivating the Civil War. In terms of statesmen and war leaders, it was Genghis Khan. Story 22. Gavrilo Princip. He assassinated Archduke Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, which set off a sequence of events that led to World War I. World War I, in turn, led to the fall of the Ottoman Empire, which was divided into the modern nation-states of the Middle East by France and Britain. Resentment over the post-war treatment of Germany by the Allies created the circumstances that led to the rise of the Nazis, who invaded Poland, causing the Second World War. The end of the Second World War marked the end of the expansion of the European imperial era and the beginning of the Cold War and decolonization. United States' global hegemony in the aftermath of the Cold War and ongoing decolonization struggles is basically the state of world affairs today. Story 23. It is hard to surpass someone like Nikola Tesla. His innovations shaped much of the modern world. Story 24. Going for people that we know how, I would say Plato in both the good and the bad. Considering unknown people too, it is some early human who invented fire and tools for sure. Story 25. Plato is the answer. He contributed significantly to the ideas and philosophy on which major religions are based. Without him, there would most likely be no major religions around the world today. Story 26. James Watt, the inventor of the steam engine, contributed to the Industrial Revolution and modern shipping, including the internal combustion engine. Story 27. I would say Napoleon. He is the primary reason the world looks like it does today. He created the conditions for Italy and Germany to exist. He established modern Swiss borders. He diminished Austria's power so much that they had to make concessions to Hungary. He caused the collapse of the Spanish Empire, allowing South America to emerge. He sold the United States the Louisiana Territory, tripling its size without any war. He reshaped the political landscape of Scandinavia. He created the code of law that became the basis for most of the Western world. He established most of France's institutions, which were copied throughout the continent. A world without Napoleon would be vastly different from today. Story 28. Assuming this can be negative, Thomas Midgley Jr., who invented chlorofluorocarbons and leaded gasoline, has made everyone in the world dumber and potentially doomed us all. Story 29. As a Muslim, I am proud to say it is Muhammad, and also Jesus, peace be upon them both, for my Christian friends. Story 30. Jesus Christ. Edit. To the atheists, I never said I was happy about it. Just the fact that we are still talking about him surely accounts for something. Story 31. Yes, it is sad but unsurprising that among historical name suggestions, I have not found a single woman in the comments. Story 32. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Story 33. Lee Harvey Oswald. Not because he cheated us of the end of President Kennedy's first term and probable second term, because he created distrust in America and opened the door to conspiracies. Trust in government was high in the 1950s and early 1960s. But with the assassination of President Kennedy, people began to wonder what actually happened. Was there a conspiracy? Was it the Central Intelligence Agency? Did Americans assassinate their own president? We do not know who assassinated President Kennedy. For the record, I believe Oswald assassinated President Kennedy as a lone gunman with no help. There has been a darkness growing over America ever since. Things have spiraled, conspiracies out of control. And then who assassinated Martin Luther King? And then who assassinated Robert F. Kennedy? And here we are now with a former president who says the Federal Emergency Management Agency is not helping the aftermath of a hurricane and is, in fact, hindering help for hurricane victims. The same is all over Twitter. Today, many Americans think their government is hurting, allowing to die people who just survived a hurricane, and by an illegitimate president who stole the election in 2020. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets that only stupid people think the hurricane was not created by their government on purpose for some political advantage. It may not be a straight line, it may be a crooked line, but Lee Harvey Oswald helped create the fractious America we suffer with now. On a side note, years ago, I saw a wonderful documentary using interviews and historical records to suggest that President Kennedy would not have escalated Vietnam but may well have pulled us out of it, possibly even before the end of his first presidential term in office. Story 34. Fritz Haber is notable for helping discover a method to synthesize ammonia for fertilizer, which is used in half the world's food supply. However, it is also used to create explosives on a large scale. He was largely responsible for the German use of chlorine gas in World War I, and his work was used to create Zyklon B, which was used during the Holocaust to kill millions of Jews. Few people have had such a direct impact on so many lives. Story 35. It really depends on your definition and meaning of influential. Story 36. Buddha, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad still affecting billions. Story 37. Cyrus the Great. If not for his conquering of Babylon and the subsequent rebuilding of Solomon's temple, Judaism likely would have died out, and we would never have had Jesus. Story 38. For Western culture, it has to be Julius Caesar. His namesake became the name of future emperors and kings for almost 2,000 years. Octavian Augustus solidified this rule by taking on Julius Caesar's name and making incredibly shrewd decisions to create an empire. However, this would never have been possible without Julius crossing the Rubicon and naming Octavian his heir. I do not think there is a more important event in Western history than Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Imagine a world where he gives up his command and returns to Rome a traitor. Eventually, the Republic would fall to a dictator based on its trajectory, but Julius was the one who set into motion the Roman Empire. Story 39. It is not a flat playing field because the further back in time you go, people become non-linearly more influential due to chaos. Story 40. I assume people like Paul of Tarsus and all the other writers who created the foundation of a religion. Another prize could go to Julius Caesar, who, in my view, committed genocide and completely reshaped Europe. Story 41. I would credit Constantine as being as influential as Jesus. He enforced conformity of ideas and gave that power to the state. Hammurabi gave us written laws 3,800 years ago, though. Story 42. Whoever the first humans were, because obviously humanity would not exist otherwise. Story 43. Thomas Midgley Jr. is the inventor of leaded tetraethyl lead gasoline and chlorofluorocarbons. Leaded tetraethyl lead gasoline allowed gasoline engines to become feasible for use in cars. It made gasoline engines run more reliably and produce more power. It gave gasoline engines the advantage needed to surpass electric cars. Chlorofluorocarbons allowed for refrigeration and air conditioning. They have changed global commerce forever. People can now live comfortably in many more places on Earth while also having non-seasonal food shipped worldwide. Combined, these two inventions have changed everything on this planet for better and worse. We can travel long distances comfortably in cars like never before. We can eat any food we want at any time of the year. The Earth has also experienced unprecedented warming because of these two inventions, which has changed life on Earth forever. Millions of animals have died. Many species are extinct or facing extinction. Coral reefs are bleached and barren. Sea levels are rising. Ice caps are melting. And extreme weather is becoming more common and severe. Thomas Midgley Jr. and his inventions of tetraethyl lead gasoline and chlorofluorocarbons have changed the world for all life on Earth, directly and indirectly. It took less than 100 years for them to artificially change the Earth in ways that would normally have taken tens of thousands of years. Story 44. Reagan is significant. People have been dealing with the consequences of his actions for nearly 45 years. Story 45. Bear with me. Long ago, when people still hunted and gathered, they wandered around. An old man who observed the sky determined the cycle of eclipses. He confirmed it and waited. About a day before the next eclipse, he said, "Feed me the best. Give me your women. or I will kill the light. Thus religion began. Story 46. The man living 2 houses down from Enkidu suggested that all the symbols we write on clay to keep track of things can be combined to form complete sentences. Story 47. Whoever invented fire, whoever discovered gravity, or the most powerful and deadly dictator. A recent example of this would be Adolf Hitler. Story 48. People say fire, but I think the person who invented string had more influence. Clothing, the bow, pulleys, bow drill, rope, bridges, book bindings, and more. Story 49. Donald Trump influenced me to break the law, lie, cheat, and be a racist. These are not qualities a person should have or aspire to. He has not made America great. Story 50. Donald Trump influenced me to break the law, lie, cheat, and be a racist, which are not qualities a person should have or aspire to. He has already made America great. Story 51. Donald Trump influenced me to break the law, lie, cheat, and be a racist. These are the qualities a person should have and aspire to. He has already made America great. Story 52. The most influential person of all time? It's a tough call, but I would argue for the toilet inventor. Seriously, imagine the chaos if we had to use the bathroom like cavemen. They did not just change lives. They revolutionized personal hygiene and embraced comfort. Talk about making history one flush at a time. Story 53. Norman Borlaug deserves consideration here. He is widely recognized for having saved over 1 billion lives. Story 54. Cyrus the Great was the king of Persia who initially allowed Abrahamic religions to begin spreading at their very start. Who knows what would have happened without the influence of those religions, which had an easier time spreading because of him. Story 55. I still think the most effective terrorist in our history was the shoe bomber. He did not even get the bomb to go off, yet billions of people have and continue to have to remove their shoes when they fly. It also created paid systems that allow people to keep their shoes on. Story 56. The most influential person of all time lived long before recorded history, and we will never know anything about them. Story 57. I guess Tesla does not make the cut according to this thread. Story 58. Modern times. Unfortunately, Adolf Hitler was the reason for the conflicts between Israel and Gaza. He also contributed to the rise of the Soviet Union and the United States, which led to the rise of the Chinese Communist Party and eventually the potential for World War III. Pre-industrial times. Napoleon Bonaparte led to the rise of Britain and colonialism. Colonial times. Mem 2 of the Ottoman Empire blocked trade between Europe and Asia, which led to Christopher Columbus's voyage to the Americas. Story 59. Aside from the unknown early human who discovered fire, probably Christopher Columbus. Story 60. James Brown is the most sampled man in music and is basically responsible for almost every great hip-hop song in history. Just think about that. Story 61. It must be Jesus based on longevity and the number of people who have heard of him. Story 62. Unintentionally, Jesus. Intentionally, Genghis Khan. Saul of Tarsus spread mythology about a person he never met because both he and the person he believed was sent from God thought the kingdom of God would come within a very brief time, namely within their lifetimes. They were both wrong, but Saul's movement spread, and here we are. 2,000 years later with extremists in Texas, Russia, Tehran, Saudi Arabia, Utah, Israel, Afghanistan, and nearly every country except China and Japan telling everyone how they should live because Saul of Tarsus could not handle the implications of Rome ruling over his nation. Story 63. Does all time include the future? So, I think Henry Ford has a strong case. Story 64. Realistically, it is a tie starting with our earliest common ancestor and all of that person's ancestors. Consider that the entire human race owes its existence to a million death-defying moments in our lineage. Go far enough back and you would find a one-celled organism that turned left instead of right, narrowly avoiding being eaten, and no human would ever have existed had it gone the other way. Story 65. Bad question. Who among Reddit users is aware of enough people over a sufficient period to assess influence like that? Story 66. Me. You will see. If this is not your attitude, you are not trying hard enough at life. Story 67. Am Dugud, first ruler of the kingdom of Ur, and the entire first dynasty of Sumer. In one generation, according to historical accounts, humanity progressed from Stone Age hunter-gatherers to a complete modern civilization with advanced farming, advanced mathematics, huge ziggurats, double-entry accounting, written language, written music, poetry, and creation epics, domestication of animals, the wheel, chariots, and carts, advanced astronomy, invention of beer, professional standing armies, advanced orthopedic surgery, preventative medicine, genetic engineering, complete knowledge of all the planets in the solar system, a complex system of religion, advanced alchemy and metalworking, understanding of electricity, using sound waves to create stone structures, airships, first recorded account of travel to the moon. All this in one lifetime that lasted only 600 years. Story 68. Muhammad was extremely influential as both a religious and military leader. Credit for the spread of Christianity is shared between Jesus Christ and the Apostle Paul. Story 69. Either Jesus Christ or the man who created him in his stories. Story 70. I have always wondered who is recognized by the most people worldwide, cutting across all language barriers. Adolf Hitler, Michael Jackson, or Bruce Lee. Story 71. Jesus was not very influential during his life. Therefore, the real influencers must have come after him. Figures like St. Paul and Martin Luther accomplished more during their lifetimes than Jesus did during his. However, Muhammad was the ultimate political, military, and religious influencer of all time, having started from nothing and persuaded many people during his lifetime and beyond. Isaac Newton invented calculus and the scientific method and is a strong candidate for the top spot. Johannes Gutenberg's printing press and the Korean inventor of modern paper would be a powerful one-two punch for changing the world. Before paper, very few people accomplished much of anything. Story 72. I would say Alexander the Great or Muhammad. Caesar is also in the running. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.